The AI paradox. So is AI intelligent? Is it conscious? This is a big question asked by many, wondering, is AI going to take over the world? To answer, is it intelligent? Is it conscious? We need to break down, what is intelligence? So intelligence can be defined under many key fundamental criteria. But one of these, and it's the bit I'm going to focus on today, is that word understanding. I'm going to tell you a little story, and it's a bit of a thought experiment. Now, it will take a little bit to get your head wrapped around it, but you're going to like where it's going. So, let's meet Phil. Phil was a 30-year-old man. He had no job, he lost his wife, and his life was just in a spiral. Phil signed up for an experiment, an isolation experiment, where he had to fly out to China. Phil was put inside an isolated room. He only had a cold bed, a shower, a toilet, just a bare minimum. And he had to stay in there for 3 whole years. No human contact, no internet, just him and his thoughts. How Phil got fed was there was an isolated contraption where the experimenter on the outside could place food and it rolls on into him. There was no contact whatsoever. I forgot to mention there was one thing that the experimenters placed in the room. Pile loads of Chinese dictionaries, thesauruses, but there was no English involved. Phil only spoke English. So to him, when he opened these books, it just looked like patterns, but it was Chinese. One day before placing the meal inside the isolated room, one of the new experimenters thought, do you know what? Let me slip a secret note under the door. This woman we'll call Sue. Sue never met Phil. However, Sue only knew he was a 30-year-old male and he's in here for an isolation experiment. Sue wrote a really nice note to Phil. Phil, the next morning, woke up all excited. Piece of paper under the door. You can't believe, what can it be? Some social interaction. To Phil's disappointment, the note was written in Chinese. Phil didn't speak a word. Longing for human contact, Phil grabbed this note and ran to some of the dictionaries, the thesauruses. Phil thought, if I can just recognize the pattern between all this text, I may be able to articulate a response. Through a lot of trial and error, he would soon come to know what was a good response and what was a bad response by the fact that he would get longer notes on certain responses and no reply on others. Over the next few years, Phil got very good at responding in Chinese. However, he still had no understanding of what he was actually saying. Let's flip across the corridor to Sue. Sue was starting to fall in love with Phil. He was telling her how beautiful she was. He can't wait to meet her on the outside. He is a multi-millionaire and he's going to take her on all these trips and give her the life of her dreams. She really couldn't wait to meet Phil. As the experiment ended and the door opened, we need to ask the question, does Sue look at Phil any differently now she understands that Phil has no understanding of Chinese? Is Phil intelligent? He does not understand Chinese. If I opened up a computer, if I showed you the coding that went into some of these AI machines, would you understand that they are only pattern recognizing and kicking you out a good response through trial and error? This has happened multiple times. And the computer, or Phil, has got very good at interpreting what you're saying and pushing out a good response. The computer does not understand what you are saying. However, to counter this, would we say Phil is not intelligent? Well, I call Phil quite intelligent. He was able to recognize the pattern from the construct he was in. He had no way of learning Chinese or recoding himself. So he done the best with the tools he had available. He was able to pattern recognize, and through trial and error, was able to love struck. So, to me, that's a really strong form of intelligence and understanding what task is at hand with the tools we have available. Going back to AI, we need to think humans did not go from non-intelligent to this full consciousness in the flick of a switch. With this AI, is it just stepping stones? Or are we digging too much into the fact? The key part of this story is the word understanding. Smash that like button.